This is Greg at Hailstrom giving the pitch for Intro to Game Design. So, what the basic framework of the class would be students would get together and they'd have to work in small teams to make their projects. Now, I think this would work best in either teams of two sharing all the work or each student acting as like a the leader of their own project. They would come up with the idea and pitch it, and we'd probably have to whittle it down into a doable idea, but once make sure it's doable, then they would have other students assist. So every student would be required to lead their own game, but they'd also be required to help on other students' games. Now, I think working in teams is going to be a really good way to do this because, first of all, working in teams, great excuse to develop teamwork skills, but mostly because video games are going to have a lot of work. They take a lot of work in general. It's really handy to split it up, and they also take a lot of different types of work. So there's a little bit of graphic design. Just inherently, this is a visual medium. We need to make that happen. So there's a little bit of graphic design around making the sprites, so the characters, making the environments, and all that stuff. So students interested in graphic design and having experience in that can more focus on that. Students interested in the sound side can work on the sound design aspect. So we have sound effects and even a soundtrack if there are students interested in music composition. Now, obviously, that sounds really crazy, but let's face it, most of these kind of 8-bit games have very, simple scores. And then, of course, the coding potential is there. So students interested in computer programming can focus on that side of it and save other students from, getting a little bit overwhelmed by that side. At this point, some math is going to be required, so maybe more advanced students can focus on that part. But as we're going to see when we look through the programming, really coding is not a requirement of this at all. Alright, and that would be the basic framework of the class. Now, outside of actually making the games, I'm imagining the daily class would also involve a small period of looking and playing and discussing other simple video games. No AAA titles, we're just looking at simple stuff that we can emulate. And it's basically seeing how these developers made the game fun and how they made their world and characters interesting and appealing. Alright, so that's the basic framework. I'm going to go into the programs themselves after this.